Okay, we have new details on a story that's developing here at home, a wildfire growing near Fort Good Hope, Northwest Territories. Here's a map showing where the fire is located, just about 1 kilometer away from the community right now. The fire has been inching toward the airport, but no structures have yet been damaged. An evacuation order remains in effect. About 300 people have left the community so far. We'd like to bring in Mike Westwick and Laura Bush. Mike is a fire information officer in the Northwest Territories, and Laura is with the Northwest Territories Emergency Management Organization, and they're in Yellowknife. So, Mike, I want to just start with you, if we could. If you could just bring us up to date on the situation with this fire near Fort Good Hope.
Yes, so overnight, the wildfire did reach the community proper. There remains no structures confirmed to be lost at this time, in part due to the fact that firefighting efforts were able to hold that fire back long enough for the humidity to begin to rise as the sunlight intensity began to drop in the evening. So that's really good news for the folks in Fort Good Hope, but there is a long fight ahead of us here. We have crews, additional reinforcements that have arrived, additional structure protection material, supplies which have arrived, and that whole team is working hard to keep that community safe.
How did they manage to do that and hold that line?
So it's a combination of air attack and ground efforts. We had air tankers working well into the night last night until visibility got too challenging. And so air tankers were completing drops to reduce the intensity there. We had 6 air tankers working that fire in addition to helicopters. And crews on the ground really had 2 priorities. One was suppressing where they could to hold the fire from the road outside the community, and setting up what structure protection equipment they did have available in the community locally at the time. The work is going to continue by the team there to get more structure protection set up to keep that community safe and to patrol around the community to find additional hotspots that may have started due to spot fires during this extreme fire day yesterday.
Yeah, unbelievable pictures coming out of the community right now, and I'm sure that residents of the area are watching very closely. Laura, I want to ask you about the latest with evacuations from the area.
Yeah, so there was a series of evacuation flights organized yesterday. We had 5 planes active who ended up transporting about 240 people from Fort Good Hope to Norman Wells, and then some evacuees were transferred from Norman Wells to Delaney. There are 2 evacuation center communities right now. Those are Norman Wells, the regional center in the Satu, and Delaney. There are 221 evacuees currently registered in Norman Wells, 12 in Delaney, also a significant amount of people left by boat. The last report we have is that there are 100 or more people who self-evacuated to a fish camp on the river near Fort Good Hope. And we're estimating between 80 and 110 people are still in the community. Most of those are first responders.
And what kind of services are available for people as they're leaving right now?
Everyone who's leaving has left already. The services being stood up are really in the evacuation center. So that's in Norman Wells primarily. There is a room with cots and blankets set up. Also, everyone was greeted with hot meals last night. The level of community care happening in those communities is really fantastic. But in terms of services available in Fort Good Hope, I wouldn't want to speak to that right now.
Okay. Mike, I want to ask you, as I said, we were looking at some pretty striking pictures there of the fire itself. What are firefighters telling you about conditions on the ground and the challenges of this fire?
Yeah, so what we're looking at today is a slightly better day in terms of weather from yesterday. Lighter winds primarily coming from the north. That should put a lot less pressure on the fire today. That said, the fire is at the community, so a lot of challenges ahead here. So the focuses today for crews on the ground are going to be installing and maintaining additional structure protection equipment that did arrive in terms of reinforcements. We now have 3 helicopters up from 1 that are going to be working to suppress that fire, to reduce the likelihood of its growth. to protect structures and to support those ground crew efforts and suppression. We're going to have air tankers and do have air tankers active in the area in order to reduce the intensity of that fire. Again, our number one focus here is protecting everything we can in Fort Good Hope going forward. A bigger team going forward is going to support those efforts. We got a lot of tough days ahead without very much rain in the future, so a lot of tough firefighting days ahead here.
Okay, and Laura, please let me know if you think Mike can address this more, but I wanted to ask about infrastructure, and we're hearing, I know we've been able to hold off on some of that structure loss, but what about infrastructure and specifically also the airport there? We know that the fire has been very close to the airport.
Yeah, so Mike will be able to speak to any latest updates on structure damage, but as far as we are aware, there is no structure damage. The conditions at the airport aren't great because of visibility. So visibility is pretty poor. The community has been smoky since last night. The last plane that left for Good Hope, the last evac flight at about 11:15 p.m. yesterday, was reporting very poor visibility conditions. Okay.
Mike, you spoke a little bit there about the forecast and what the weather is doing. I'm wondering what your concerns are for where this goes from here going forward and the challenges of this fire, particularly when it comes to the weather, and what firefighters might be dealing with in the days ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we expect to continue to see significant fire activity in the area. We do not expect to see much meaningful precipitation in the next 72 hours. So we're going to have an active fire in our hands. Our number one focus, again, is going to be on a defensive posture, protecting structures and the things that people care about in that community so that we can do our best to get people home as soon as possible and as safely as possible.
Thank you both for joining us today, and I hope to keep in touch in the days ahead as we continue to follow this. Mike Westwick is a fire information officer in the Northwest Territories. Laura Bush is a spokesperson for the Northwest Territories Emergency Management Organization.